Welcome back to Animator Artist Live. This is the second video on shattering and breaking in Maya. Check out the first video if you haven't seen it on the basic settings, and in this lesson we're going to smash a car through a wall, all with no plugins. In the next video we'll create a cinematic shot of multiple destructions of a bridge. So let's get to it. Okay, let's see how this scene's set up, ready to start. So I've built a wall just out of a plain polycube. You can see over here I have a width of 200, a height of 100, a depth of 6, and I've given it subdivisions. You can see here 50 across and 40 high. It gives us our subdivisions, and just 3 in depth. And then I've moved it up on the y-axis 50 because that's half of the height to get us exactly on the floor. I've built a little ramp at the back for our car to go up. And I've already referenced in my car rig, and the car just jumps forward and through. So we're going to have a nice dynamic camera at the front as the car smashes through. It's going to go and then like straight past the camera here. So this is what we're going to aim for. If you'd like to learn how to rig that car, I did that in another tutorial, just check that out. I can't give the actual car model away because it was a paid asset, but that is from TurboSquid. But this whole scene at the end I will be giving completely away to any patrons that support the channel. So let's move on. So first of all, we need to shatter and break up this wall into fragments. So I hope you've seen the previous video on how I went over all the basic settings of the shatter tool and how it works and the best methods to use it. So let's go to our effects menu up here, open effects, and we need to go effects and then shatter and open our settings. And I'm going to go reset the tools, and we're on solid shatter. Okay, so what we want to do here is the car is going to come through sort of here. So we want most of the small pieces to be in the middle and then larger pieces around the outside. So they're going to have like different regions, and they're going to be called different rigid sets when we set the dynamics to it. So if you look here, I will just quickly draw this on. So we're going to have a section sort of around here, and then where we're going to have lots of small fragments, and then out here we're going to have bigger ones, so it'll sort of be different sets. Okay, so let's break this up so we can see where the car's coming through. So we want to just start with big chunks and then work our way down, and then once we've got it set up we're good to go. So let's try something. Let's try a starting value of about 8 over the whole thing. And we're just going to go for a really low jaggedness amount just to give it a little bit of detail just for this tutorial. Remember, if you do add too much jaggedness, it does tend to crash Maya. I mean, the shatter effect isn't that stable anyway as it is, but as long as you stick to small amounts, we're sort of good to go. I'm going to choose hide. We want to hide our original mesh, and let's just see where we get with this, because obviously we can't choose where the cuts go with this. We sort of have to rely on the algorithm, and we can change the different seed to try different things. So let's first of all give this a go, and as you can see we get our error message. If you remember from the previous video of just the settings, we need to delete the history and also remove any transform. So let's do that. So you can either go up to edit, delete by type in history, and then modify center pivot, or you can go to your modeling tool set and click these 2 buttons, which will do exactly the same. As you can see now, we have no values in translate X, Y, or Z, and there's no history. So let's now try that again. So just going to select the wall, 8 pieces, click apply, and there it goes. It's going to work through and do its magic. So let's see what it gives us straight off the bat. Okay, so that's pretty good. So as you can see, we've got a shape here. I'm going to turn on my wireframe unshaded with this little button here, so we can see the little cracks it's given us. Yeah, that's not a bad place to start. So we've got 1, 2, 3 big ones up here. Yeah, that's good. So we want to create this sort of smaller area in the middle. So what we're going to do is go through and shatter these up a little bit more. Let's just rewind the timeline a bit, just so when the car's coming through. So you can see this big one here, we can smash this up into quite a few little pieces, and we want to sort of break it here and here ideally. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to save the file because as you know, it does crash a lot, the shatter. So I'm going to keep saving this. So I'm going to go to File, Save Scene As, and I'm going to do incremental numbers. So I'm going to go into the folder I want, smash through wall, and I'm going to save this as version 2, and you'll probably have quite a few versions, or just keep saving so that if it does crash you can go back where you were. So let's take this piece in the middle. Now we can sort of shatter multiple pieces at once. Obviously that does, depending on your machine, it might crash Maya more, or it might not. We'll see what we can get away with. So let's now break this middle piece into, let's say, 5 pieces and click apply. Now you'll see we get an error here. Now this is a weird one. Now I just worked this out with trial and error. I think it has something to do with the, well, obviously has something that, you know, we've got apply interior material set to true. We don't really need the interior material for this demo, so I'm going to turn it off, but you do get this error anyway. And what you have to do, it's quite frustrating, but this is what I worked out, is you have to right click, go down to assign existing material and choose the initial shader, which is Lambert 1. Now when I try this, if I go to 5 and apply, it works. So it's just a funny little workaround. So we always have to keep applying the shader back onto it. So let's just see here. So as you can see, it shattered that quite nicely. We've got this piece here. That's going to look nice when we sort of smash the car through. Yeah, those pieces, that looks good, and we can keep this one sort of being big, maybe break it down here, and I'm just going to hit Control S. I'm going to keep saving, Control S, so in case it crashes. Okay, so let's just go up to here. Okay, so that's not bad. I'm going to break up this one. I'm going to try a few at once to sort of speed this up, and this one in sort of a few goes. That one's already quite small in the middle, and so we'll do this one as well, and let's see what we get. Click apply again, same error. So we've got assign existing material Lambert 1. Now what we can do, we've assigned that again and it will work, but if we're going to use that command a lot, we could put it up on the shelf. So if you open up your script editor, you can scroll down to where you saw the mail script to do that. I'll just show you. We want the existing Lambert, so existing material, and then Lambert 1. You can see there that's this tiny little bit of mel that we want. So if you just highlight it, I'm just going to put it in our modeling set now, and you middle mouse drag it up to the shelf, and then say mel, you'll get our own little button. So now it'll work. So now when we do this, press this button, it does exactly the same. Okay, so it's actually just using that command to apply it without us having to right click all the time. So there we go, we've done that. Let's do this again. Let's try, let's take this down to 3 pieces and click apply. It's going to take a bit longer this time because it's doing all these pieces at once, and there you go, it worked perfectly well. So now we're sort of breaking this down, we're getting into the nitty gritty. Let's just see what pieces we've got here, and let's just go select this one, and yeah, that's going to look good, and yeah, that will look good when it shoots out past the camera. And we've still got a few big pieces in here, so now we can sort of start breaking these up more. I'm going to hit Control S. I'm so used to just with my fingers on the keyboard, Control S all the time. So now we want the fragments in this area to be a lot smaller. This bottom bit can definitely be broken up, so let's just shatter that again, same thing. So let's just select this piece, hit our little mel script, and then click apply. There you go. That's actually worked out really well, that one, because this piece here, we can be this can sort of shatter away from the bottom as the car breaks through. Save again. Right, now let's sort of break this up a bit more now, get a bit smaller. So I want these ones in the middle to be even smaller. So let's select this one, and this one. Let's see. And this one. And let's do 3 again. Hit our mail script, click apply. There we go. Oh, what's happened there? We seem to have lost a piece. Where has that gone? So let's just undo that. Okay, I'm going to do that bit separately. So that one, and this one. And let's run that again. 3 pieces, apply. Yep, that worked okay. So we've got a nice small, this is what I want. I want these little tiny pieces so that when the car smashes through, you get this, you're going to see these little sort of shovel shards go towards the camera. So let's just see, we've still got a big piece there. That's a nice small piece. So it just takes a little bit of trial and error, this sort of, you know, gently breaking up the fragments. And once it is worth it. Once you've got these smaller pieces, it will look better for the animation. I won't try and do too much so the tutorial doesn't go on too long. But let's try this again. Let's break this one up into 3. We could do 5, but let's do 3. There we go. Yeah, so that's a nice piece there. Now I definitely want this one underneath to be, it's quite big at the moment. So again, I'm always hitting Control S. And let's do this, break this one into 3. This is the one we had the problem with just now, but there you go, it worked fine this time. So, you know, Maya can be a bit funny, it has a life of its own. That's worked out quite well. So let's check the car again. It's going to come through there, so we've got all these small bits. That looks good. Now let's break up some of the bits around it, because they are a bit too big at the moment. So let's try, because you've got the top of the car coming through here. So let's break up these two. Again, this one here, and click apply. Oh, I didn't have this one selected, did I? So we'll do this one separately. See what we get. That's a bit better. This piece at the top is massive. So, you know, we do want some smaller fragments again, I suppose. We can add a bit more what's called glue around the outside. The glue holds the fragments together a bit more, so we can treat these differently. But let's definitely break this up a bit more. I'm going to just do 3 pieces again. Yeah, and this one again. I kind of wanted a bit of a horizontal bit there, so let's do another one there. There we go, that's a bit better. So you will get some fragments, the bigger ones from the top. Let's have a look at this piece. I think, is this 2? Oh, that's 2 pieces. So there's 1. Hit this, hit apply. Yeah, that looks good. Got 1 piece there, 1 there. Again, I think this one needs to go. This one needs to go smaller. It's sort of cut it through there. So let's do another. Let's do another 3. You can, you know, you could type in sort of 8 and just really, you know, whack it up. But I kind of like to. You don't get much control over it anyway, so I like to sort of have a bit more control as I go. You can sort of, you know, make it a little bit easier on yourself if you just go bit by bit, really. Okay, this is looking good. Yeah, so let's break up some of the outer bits now a bit more. Maybe this one could do just a little bit. I just want to go to object mode there. I didn't want to go into face selection mode. So let's just break this one into 3. Yeah, that'll work better. And let's see, is there any more really big bits? So this one here. Let's break this one up. Okay, that's good. That's looking good. This one here, definitely. Let's give this 3 pieces as well. Oh, there you go. Another sort of flip out. Again, you get these little issues. Let's do it again. And 3 pieces. Let's try it again. There you go. See, you do get this sort of funny, it's got a life to its own, as we know Maya has by now. Right, I'm going to save that again. So we've got quite a nice sort of fragmented wall now as it comes through. So now I want some sort of tiny fragments. So, you know, you want to see, quite a little bit of debris. Debris, sorry. And then let's try and break up these middle ones. I'm going to select this. I'm going to try and break up quite a few at once here and see what happens. Let's see this one. Let's see, the car's coming through right through there. Yeah, great. So now I'm going to try and sort of set this up to 5 and just now take it up a notch. And I'm going to save again. And let's just see it. Let's just see if it manages it. There you go. Yeah, that worked out all right. There you go. So now we've got some nice little pieces in here. This is gonna work well. I'm gonna save again. Let's see. So the windscreen comes through, smash there. You know, you can take this as far as you want. You really could. You can keep going to small pieces. It's really up to you. I'm just trying to do this a bit artistically at the moment. Let's just see. I just would like to see those fragments here a bit more. There you go. And this one. Again, so it's a bit of a laborious process, but it is really worth it when you see, you know, these bits flying towards the camera and smashing on the floor. Okay, I think that's looking pretty good. Yeah, maybe this one here, you know, these two here could be broken up a bit more, because this is where the wheels are coming through here on those three. Just click save. You can see the height of the ramp goes through there, and you know, and from the side you do want bits to fly down this way. So let's try and break those up a little bit each. So 3. Oh, let's try 4. Let's try go for it. You know. There you go. That worked. That worked totally fine. Seems a little bit more stable than I gave it credit for. Okay, this is looking good. You know, you can get carried away with this. I think that's pretty good. So I want a nice effect that as it goes through, you get these bigger bits that just sort of drop, but the smaller ones, they shatter and they spread across the ground. So you do need enough to do that with. So let's just try one more here, and let's go 4 pieces again. That's given us some long, thin pieces. That's all right. I was going to say we could chip. Maybe I might undo that one, and I'm going to change the C to some whatever. You can just type in a random number and try it again. There you go. See how they gave us? So we did have downward cuts, and now we got across. You see, it's the seed is completely different. It's completely random. Let's have a look. This one, that could be a nice big chunk, and then finally, I think maybe just this one at the top is too big. Let's do, again, 3 or 4. There you go, that looks nice. Okay, I think we're good to go with that. So that's the wall shattered. And, you know, make sure you save your project again. So now we're going to move on to actually start adding the dynamics with Maya's built-in system, which is called Bullet. So we're going to learn about rigid body dynamics, and the different effects it has in sort of real world physics. Hey, so before we just add the dynamics, I just want to quickly bring your attention to something to be mindful of, is that when the shatter is shattering, it doesn't just shatter this way and this way, it can also do it this way. So you can actually get caught out. I've noticed a few fragments, look at this, that aren't actually even showing on the front, sorry, but are on the back. If I lift this up, they're not even visible on the front. So it's just something to be mindful of, that, you know, you've got these huge shards on the back and they're not even showing on the front. And let's have a look at this little one here. It's massive on the back, but small on the front. And there's also like this one, which is quite small, and then big on the back. So I just want to quickly just break a few of these ones up on the back. This one, this one, this one. Let's have a look, because look, it's very small on the front, but very large on the back. So let's just break these up into, say, sort of 3 or 4 pieces. Let's just go with 4 for now, and a seed value of 0 for now. Let's give that a go. Let's press our little meld script, click apply. There you go. So that has now given us some better geometry. If you ever get this and you need to go to object mode, you can just press the F8 key, which goes to object mode. And there you go. So you've got this little fragment which isn't even visible from the front, but now it's broken up more on the back. So we'll get sort of, you know, better shatter as it goes through. Let's just check this piece. There you go. Look, that's very small on the back, but on the front it's huge. So let's break that one up as well. Let's just go like this. Apply. There you go. That should give us a bit better option. And let's just have a quick once over at these big pieces. So you've got this one here, let's see, so yeah, very big on the back. This one is now broken up. Then look, this one's tiny on the back, but big on the front. So maybe we could give that just sort of 3 pieces. This is why I like to do it bit by bit. It's a bit more sort of, you know, creative. You get a bit more control over what you're doing. Let's just check this huge piece here, because we want some of them, we want the tiny ones to be in the middle, medium around the edge, and then the big ones around the outside, so that they can just fall separately. Let's check this one. Yeah, so I think that is okay now. I just want to have it so that when the car breaks through, you've got these tiny fragments bursting, but then the bigger ones just around the edge. So I think with that, we are good to go. I might just break this one up into 3. There we go. That seems great. I'm going to save that, and now we're good. We can move on to our rigid body dynamics. So you're going to want to make sure you've got the actual bullet dynamic plugin enabled. If you don't see this little tab with your bullet shelf, you haven't got it turned on. So what you need to do is just go up to Windows, Settings, Preferences, and then go to your plugin manager, and then just type in the word. You'll see it here. Just type in bullet and it'll come up here. So if you've got this long list, just type in bullet. And there you go. Just make sure those are turned on. You can have auto load on as well, so it loads up automatically. So that's how you need to turn it on. So let's start this. If you haven't done any dynamics before, it's real world physics, so that you can just add gravity to a piece. It will drop to the floor and just and collide and interact with each other. So you have rigid bodies, which are the pieces that will bounce and collide with each other, and passive rigid bodies where it bounces off that don't move. So that's the basic principle. So we're going to go through that now, and I want to set up sort of regions, and I'm going to introduce you to something called rigid body sets as well. So what we want is, as before, let me just draw this on again. So we want to have like the hole in the middle where the tiny fragments are, and then around the edge sort of another set where we can control these larger fragments, and then the bits around the outside we're going to get to stay solid so they don't move. Okay, so let's start grouping up our pieces. I'm going to get rid of our shatter window for now. So let's start grouping these up. I want sort of a solid mass around the outside, really. So we'll have those pieces. I'm holding down Shift and Control to add to my selection, and I'm just dragging, and something like that. So these ones here are not going to move. It's going to be like our solid wall, and I'm going to hit the 4 key to go to wireframe just to check, you know, selections around the back and everything as well. So that looks good. So let's group those pieces. Hit Control G to group, and up here or over here you can rename it. So let's name this outer pieces group, or just whatever you want. Hit return, and there you go. It comes over in your outliner. If I open it up, you've got all our pieces there, and I want to take the group out of the solid shatter group. So I'm just going to middle mouse click and just drag it out so it's separate. Now if I close that down, we have all our pieces here in our group. So whenever we want to select them, we just select the whole thing, or we can select individual pieces, and they are grouped away from that now. And let's tidy things up so we can select things easier. I'm now going to put all these outer pieces on a separate layer so we can reference them, so we can template them, sorry, and turn them on and off. So I'm going to, with our group selected, go over to here, going to go to layers and create layer from selected, and you'll get a new layer. And if I turn that on and off, you can see they come on and off. And I'm going to double click, and I'm going to name this outer, and click save. Now we have, if I turn back to shaded view, now we've got this on a layer. We can turn this on and off, but we can also template it so that we can't touch it. At the moment we can select these. If you hit this little button here, it's template, and you cannot select them. And you can do it again, and you'll get an R where you cannot select them, but they are actually solid and not wireframe. So this is really useful. Turn it off again, and you're back to normal selection, or press the V key to completely hide them. So this is really useful for making selections. I use this all the time in modeling and animation to get things out of the way. You might have a room with walls, etc., and you want to be able to see your camera through it. Perfect way to do it. Okay, so let's move on to the next piece, and I'm going to now select the center pieces. So the car's coming through here, so we want to select the tiny fragments. Let's see, I'm going to select just sort of these ones in the middle, I think, something like that. I'm going to hold down my Shift and Control to add, and then you can just sort of add the ones you want. I'm going to deselect this one on the outside. So what you do now, let go of the Shift key, just hold the Control key, and now you can see it sort of and deselects it. Let's see what happens if we deselect this one. Yeah, that looks good. And I'm also going to select this tiny one here, or is that a big one? Yeah. Okay, let's just. I'm just selecting and deselecting to see what the differences we get. That looks good. Maybe we could include, there's a tiny little fragment here, but how big is it on the back? Yeah, that's quite small, so that looks good. Try a few of these. See, they're quite big actually. They would be good to have them as maybe part of the secondary ones. So yeah, this is where sometimes you might want to go back and re-shatter to get some smaller bits in there as well. It's all done in sort of, you know, creative way. Let me just select that one. So if you do want a nice burst, see this piece on the back is actually very big. This piece here. Let's just see if we select these as well. So that's not bad. That's not a bad selection. You can see it coming through there as sort of a big slice there. I think that'll do for now. Okay, so I'm going to group that again. Control G, and I'm going to call this group inner pieces, or whatever you want. You know, whatever naming convention you have. Hit the return key to bring that up. I'm going to hit the roll over my. When you're in over your outliner, you can roll over and hit the F key, the same as you can in here to focus in on something. And I'm going to middle mouse and drag it out of there. Okay, so you can see in our solid shatter, you can see our original pieces which we told it to hide, which we're not going to use. So at the moment we've now got outer pieces, inner pieces. Let's create another layer for that. Layers. Create layer from selected, and let's double click to name this inner. And you can give this you can color code this if you want, so we can say give this a yellow so that when you select it you'll get your yellow outlines instead. And I'm going to template that. There you go. And I'm just going to hide the ramp in the background, and then the pieces that are left are our inner pieces. So let's just select all of those. I mean our mid sort of pieces we're going to call them. So let's highlight those, group again, and let's call this mid pieces group. There we go. Oh, I think I've spelled that wrong. Oh, it doesn't matter for now. And go over to here, and then we're going to drag this out. We can rename that later and just close this down. So now we have our 3 groups. And I'm going to put this on its own layer as well, just so we can deal with it easier. So we've got our mid pieces selected, and then I'm going to go to layers, create layer from selected. I'm going to call this mid. Might give this another. Okay, great. So we've set up our, and again, I'm going to now save this. Always good to save different versions as well. So let's go save scene as, and I'm going to call this version 3. Save as, keep saving. Okay, there we go. So we've set up our different groups. So you can turn them on and off over here, just to be able to make working easier, and we can template them and reference them to work how we want, when we want. So I'm going to untemplate the inner ones, because that's the ones we're going to work with first. And as you can see, because I've given it a yellow color code there, it's sort of, when you're viewing wireframe unshaded with this button, then you get your sort of yellow outlines. It just sort of color codes. It's just sometimes easy to work with if you've got a lot of geometry going on. Now with dynamics, what you can do is you can add dynamic to a single piece if you like, but the reason we've done it in groups is that we're going to use something called rigid body sets. So instead of say selecting all of these and adding dynamics and then having to deal with the settings, the weight, the gravity all separately, we can treat it as one group. All these fragments are within one rigid body set. So let's do that. Let's make our first rigid body set. So over in make sure your bullet menu is open. So you can click this button here. So if you see the down here, you'll always get your tool tips for what they are. So I roll over, look down the bottom, it says create an active rigid body, or over here, create a set of rigid bodies. So this is the button you would use, or you can go up to bullet, rigid set, and then open the options box. So I'm going to give this a name. I'm going to call it inner bullet rigid set. So I've typed this in before. and because we want to keep our naming conventions the same. So we've got inner, outer, inner, and mid here, and in our groups, and in our rigid body set name, so that we can keep it a bit clean. Click apply and close, and we've created our first rigid body set. And as you can see, they're already exploding. So we've added dynamics to this. So if I just turn off, the wireframe on shaded, and then I press play, they explode. Okay, obviously it doesn't look good at the moment, but you can see the dynamics are working on it already. So let's see what we've got here. So what you want to do is keep note of this over in your outliner. Now what I have on, which is really useful, is display and then shapes. So if you display shapes, you'll get the shape nodes of all the nodes in this. And if I open this up a little bit, and here is our bullet solver. This is the whole physics engine. This is the system. And if I open this up, you can see we have our bullet solver, and we have the set initial state and the solve state. So this is how we can get to all the settings. So if I click on bullet solver, you can see we've got some settings over here. Now I like to go into the attribute editor to open up this properly and see all the settings. We've got enable simulation, obviously, so it's on. You've got your start time, you can set your start time. And you've got this internal fixed frame rate. Now, this ups the quality of it. It sort of ups the frame rate. If you've got like a really complicated simulation, you can change this. And I like to put it on at least 120 or 240 to get a better simulation, better quality, or probably even 240 to be honest. Okay, so that's a good place to start. We've got our gravity at the moment, which is on real world scale, which is minus 9.8. That is what gravity is in the real world. But we are not in the real world. This scene is in centimeters. So I'm gonna change this in a minute. I'll show you the difference in a minute. I'm gonna change this. I'm gonna add a 0, or it's either 98 or even 980, depending on if you're 1:1, you're sort of 1:2, or sort of just in centimeters here. So let's just have a little look at these settings before, and then come back to this. So at the moment you can see it's just exploding without us doing anything, and it's going all over the place. And the advantage is that we've created a rigid body set, so we don't have to select each individual piece and set the gravity, the weight, all done, all within the set over here. So let's go to our set initial state of our inner bullet rigid set, and let's have a look at some of the settings. So if I go to rigid attributes, you've got your mass, your damping, friction, and restitution. I'll go over some of these in a minute. The initial conditions, glue, whether it's initially sleeping, and collision attributes. And this is what I want first. At the moment, it's put like an invisible box around to detect the collisions of each piece. But as there's a box, they're all interacting, so it thinks they're overlapping each other, which forces them to burst open, because it thinks they're overlapping, they're touching. So you want to change this to hull, because what that does is it takes the actual shape of the geometry instead of a bounding box, and it gives you better. Look, there you go. So if I now play it, you're not getting this crazy explosion. It's just falling with the gravity, which is what we want. And at the moment, as you can see, it's going really slow because of our gravity, which is what I mentioned. And another little tip is sometimes if you scrub the timeline and it doesn't quite look right, you do have to give it a chance and let it to go at least up to the end of the timeline once. So you noticed before it came out, but then it went into the real simulation. So it's just something to keep in mind here. And I'm going to change this collision shape margin. At the moment, this is 0.04, which is actually 4 centimeters. So you can imagine it's actually thinking that the gaps between them are 4 centimeters, but we don't want anything really because they're touching. So you can take this down to really low, or even turn it off to 0 for now. Let's have a little look. There we go. Right, now let's go back to our gravity and set that to real world, which, because we're in centimeters, we need to compensate. Obviously a car is not like 10 centimeters high as we've got it here. So let's try this at minus 980. So add 2 decibels, and there you go. It's falling as if real brick would. But as you can see, it's just going through the floor because we haven't set up a floor yet. So let's do that. So let's go to here, and I'm going to see this little button here. It says ground plane. It gives it an invisible ground plane. Now we can add our own ground plane and add that as a passive collider, which does give us more options, but let's just have a little look at this ground. I'm going to rewind and play. There you go. And as you can see, it's just landing on the ground, and it already looks like quite nice. There's no explosion, there's no nothing like that, but the pieces are all interacting, they're going on the floor. You can imagine this when the car jumps through and it lands on the floor. So you can see how quick and easy this is. The good thing about Bullet is it is very quick to simulate, you know, even if you don't have a really high-powered computer. So I'm just going to stop that for now. And I'm going to say, keep saving, guys, keep saving all the time. So I'm just working on these sort of major smash pieces at the moment. So what we don't, at the moment, it's just starting straight away. As soon as you play the scene, there's gravity, boom, it falls. We don't want that. We want it to stay where it is and only sort of gravity work when the car smashes through it. So this brings us to our next bit, which is called initially sleeping. We want to tell this how to sleep. So this is a simple little setting. I'm going to select our inner Bullet set, and I'm going to go up to see this little button here. It says initially sleeping. So I'm going to set this to on. Sometimes it's a little bit funny. Sometimes you have to turn it on and off twice to get this to work. You see, at the moment it's still falling. There we go. Okay, so now we've told it to stay asleep. Do not do anything until something triggers that. And that trigger will be something hitting it, something colliding with it. Now, we're going to go through some of these settings as well in a minute. So I want to give this, this is the math. This is how heavy it is. Now, it doesn't make it fall quickly with gravity. It's what effects have on each other. So I'm going to give this sort of an initial mass of, say, something like 10. Now, let's just have a little look at this linear damping. I'm going to turn off initial sleeping for a second just to show you how this works. Let's get this to fall. And as you can see, it just falls. Now, if I add some linear damping, let's just take this right up. You can actually do this live, actually. So let's just play this, and I'm just going to adjust this live. And as you can see, as I drag this up, see it falling sort of slower. And then the angular damping is the rotational values. So if I do this, see how they're not rotating at all anymore. And if I take this right down, they rotate more. And take the linear damping down, and they move quicker, they spread further. And you've also got the friction, which is how when they hit something, if they slide across. If I take this friction down, you see how it's like ice. You see that? They're just going straight off screen. So you add a little bit of friction, and they stop, and then you add a bit more. There you go. And if I put this straight up to here, they wouldn't go anywhere. So this is on almost 1, and they're not sliding out at all. Now the restitution is the sort of bounce. So let's just take this back up to 0.5 and take this back to default as well. For now, you know, these are settings that we will tweak again and again and again. Now restitution is how much sort of bounce. It might be better to, in another example where something really collides with it at a heavy weight. But it's sort of how much you bounce. You see this sort of vibration you get on the floor. So that's a brief initial look at those, and I'm going to turn this off and turn this back to initially sleeping. And now we're going to learn about colliders. So now at the moment you can see nothing is triggering it. So now we want to get something to trigger it, which is the car, but we will sort of use a different collider object to smash through that wall. Okay, let's learn about colliders. So let's create our first collider. So let's just use a sphere for now. Let's turn off the Jeep, because we're just going to show you how it works with just a normal collider first. Okay, so I'm going to go back to frame 1 and let's create some geometry. So polymodeling, I'm just going to use a sphere for now. There it is. I'm going to scale it up, move it back. And one little tip, don't freeze the transforms on this, because it does tend to mess it up. So just create it at the world origin and then just move it back to where you want. So we've got a little sphere here, and what I'm going to do is just get this to smash through this little wall here. So now we need to create what's called an active rigid body. So again, we can go to our bullet set, a bullet menu, sorry, up here. We can click either this button here or bullet and then say active rigid body. So you've got active, which is sort of one that's active, that's smashing anything, passive, which doesn't move. Okay, there's the difference. So active rigid body, let's just open up the settings and the collider shape. So with this one, obviously, you know, you want to keep the resolution down. That's why if you've got a complicated geometry like the Jeep, you create your own wrapper geometry around it. But at the moment, it just gives you a basic box. But let's turn this to sphere because we're using a sphere. Now with this, you've got a dynamic rigid body, which would be something that's affected by real world, by gravity. So that's the one we want at the moment. Now if we were animating this ourselves, we would turn this to kinematic rigid body, which is what we're going to do with the Jeep in a minute. We've got never sleeps, we don't need that on at the moment, and we've got the mass, and I'll just leave that at 1 because I want to show you how that works as well. And just check the other settings. What we're going to do is give this an initial velocity. You've got X, Y, Z, and we're moving in Z. I'm going to make this move straight away in 50, and I'm going to click apply and close. Okay, so now you can see this little sort of green symbol around it, which means it's an active rigid body. You've got your settings over here as well. You can change them, and you can also go into your attribute editor and change them by selecting bullet rigid shape. So here's all our settings. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click play and just see what velocity we've got, and as you can see, it's not much. It moved it, but not much. Okay, so now let's just whack the initial velocity up to, let's have a little look, initial velocity. So now let's change this to sort of like 500 and see what we get. And not much. Oh, hang on, click return. There you go. Sorry, I got to hit return. As you can see, it's giving it an initial velocity of 500, and it's hitting the wall and smashing it. So this is triggering this. Okay, so now let's up the velocity again. Let's say choose 1000 to get it to go really fast and see what we get. There you go. It smashes into it, but it's really quite light. Now, if you remembered, I set a mass on the set of 10, and this is set to 1. So it's saying that this is lighter than the wall. So it won't go, it's got, compared to this, the weight is very little. So let's change the mass. This was on 10, let's just check that. So the mass of our rigid body, you could take this down to 1. You know, I've got this at 10 at the moment. Now let's select our active rigid body, and let's change the mass to something like 100. Now let's do it. At the moment, it just touched it and pinged off. It's almost like a tennis ball going back. Let's see what happens now. As you can see, it's gone a little bit further, but not that much. So let's put this up to 1000 and see what we get. There you go. It's not that much of a difference, but it is heavier. So now let's take the rigid body set here, and let's take the mass down to 1. There you go. So you can see it now actually going into the brick. So let me just rewind that. As it goes through, you see how it's actually penetrating it now. It's going in it. So the weight of this is a lot heavier than this. I mean, the values are quite high. I didn't expect them to go that high, but you know, that's just something you have to play with. So let's now try here, and let's I don't know, let's go up to 10,000, something crazy, and let's see. There you go. See what happens now? It's so heavy that it's actually smashed through it. So the mass is very sort of delicate. So you can see that works really well now. It sort of smashes through it, and it's quite dynamic. And there you go. So now, and I like the settings on the floor that we set the friction to sort of a third of the way up. There you go. That's quite nice. So that gives you a little idea of the active rigid bodies and how you can set initial velocity. So this could be for a meteorite, for a bullet, for anything. If you don't want to actually animate it yourself, you just want something to happen instantly, this is a good way around. Now I want to show you how to do, instead of leaving it to the velocity, we actually animate it by hand. So we can animate this ball bouncing and then through, and actually control everything about it. So let's move on to that now. Okay, so let's delete the sphere. We don't need it anymore. And we're going to use the Jeep. Let's bring the Jeep back, rewind, go back to here, going to bring our Jeep back. Now, at the moment, we want to create a new collider object. We could select the car and just have that be the collider, but it's very detailed geometry. You don't want to do that. You want to create sort of a base mesh around it. So imagine if like all these polygons, that what it has to work out, the wheels, the grille is touching. There's no need for that. You just need a basic shell around it, and then use that as the active collider. So let's quickly create, let's go back to our poly modeling set, create a cube. I'm just going to bring this back, just really sort of basic shell, and let's just sort of scale this up. I'm going to go to wireframe so we can see what we're doing, and we're just going to sort of create a little cage around what we're doing. So now let's just get our multi-cut tool, and I'm going to cut here, here. Let's do one at the front here, and I'm going to go to vertex and just sort of bring this in to make a sort of, you know, Jeep shape. And you'll never see this. This is just what's going to collide with the wall. That's all. So let's just bring those in, something like that, and then I'm going to select them all. Scale it in, something like that. Let's see, bring those in. Just really sort of basic poly modeling. Bring this back. And then it doesn't really matter about the back because the front is what's going to smash through anyway. So let's just bring this up to here. Something like that will do, I think. Okay, and let's just call this, let's just give this a name so we know what we've refined it. Jeep collider. Okay, I'm going to delete the history on that as well. So don't forget, just go to edit, delete by type, not all, just delete by type, and then history. So I've cleaned all that out. And yeah, that's how we're going to. I think that's enough for now. So and then we'll just parent this on. So okay, so at the moment the Jeep does this. It goes through, and we want this to be the collider. So we need to parent this to the Jeep. So let's bring back our NURB curves. Show NURB curves, and I'm going to parent this to the main controller. So I'm going to let's say select the controller. Obviously, select what it's parenting to first. Select this. Go to our animation set, constrain, and then parent. You want to make sure this is maintain offset is on just at the default values, and click add. So now it moves with the Jeep. Okay, let's just go back to a shaded view, and at the moment, you know, it's a bit silly sort of seeing it there. So why don't we put this on its own layer? Say something like layers, create layer from selected, give it a quick name, Jeep collider, something like that. That'll do for now. Click save. So now that we can just put this to template so we can see it. Okay, so now we're going to we obviously can't select it though at the moment, so I'm going to save our scene again, and I'm going to just untemplate it quickly so that we can select it, and then set this as our collider. And let's see what this gives us. Okay, so this is where it gets exciting. So let's select this. Let's go back to our effects, and then the bullet modeling set. You can either use this or again up here, bullet. I'm going to create a passive, an active rigid body. Sorry. Select the options box, and this time we want hull because we want it to use the shape. Okay, and we're going to change this to kinematic rigid body because we don't want gravity to affect it, the real world. It's literally just a smashing object. Okay, so select that, and obviously we know we need quite a bit of mass for this to get through. So let's start with something like 100 and click apply and close, and let's just template this off, and let's just see what this gives us now. Let's just rewind, click play. Okay, so at the moment you can see it's not gone with it. Let's just pause that and untemplate it. and then just go to wireframe, and you can see the little collider object in there. So let's just check it's not the parenting. We can do that with, with this. Obviously the parent constraint is not working with that. So let's go select our Jeep, go under here, and let's have a look at our parent constraint. And let's delete that constraint. It's good to keep all these mistakes in so you can see how to fix it. And we've got our Jeep Collider, and what it's done is it's created a group node above it. So it would probably be best to parent this whole group, or let's just see. Yes, so there you go. So we actually want to parent this bit to it, not the actual shape. So let's just try that. I like to leave these things in, like I say, just to show you how to get around it. I don't want to just magically have this thing work. That's not how things work in real life. So select this again, select the bullet rigid body shape of the Jeep, and let's try parenting this. Animation, constraints, parent. Oh, I did have a little error message come up then. Let's just see, I deleted that a bit too quick, so let's just open this up and see what it gave us. Okay, so we've got targets must be of a type transform, so it's saying you can't parent that. Okay, so that was a good little test. So let's just undo that, and let me just mute this, and let's now try parenting the actual whole collider shape. So let's select this, select the Jeep Collider group node above, and go animation, constraint, parent. Can you see that? So I'm glad I left that all in. So you now know that you can't just parent the collider shape direct to it because it needs the transform values. You can't just parent the actual shape node, the bullet, of your rigid body. We now know that we should create the rigid body first. It gives us a group node, and then we parent that. Okay, so let's just go back. Let's go back to shaded mode, and we're going to go back to this, and let's just see what we've got now. Let's just press play, and boom! How cool is that? Amazing. And as you can see, we don't need as much mass on the thing now, because as opposed to the sphere that was that we're using the initial velocity, this is coming through whether we like it or not, because we have keyframed it coming through. So as you can see, the fragments go really far. So this from here now, it's a case of like tuning it and polishing how much the fragment you want to shatter. So that's pretty good. They are exploding a bit too much now. So let's now take let's select this. Let's take the mass. Let's see. Oh, you've got an initial velocity on there. Obviously, we don't want that on. And we want to take the mass. Let's take it down to something like 50. See how that affects it. Yep, it's a bit better. Yeah, it's looking good. Okay, so we've done that. We've got the Jeep to work. Now let's move on to our other rigid sets. Get those to work. What we want to do is we want to get this midsection. Let's just hide the inner. Oh, the inner seems to have moved. Oh, don't worry about that. But this outer midsection, we're now going to get that to obliterate as well, but on a slower sort of scale and small. And I'm going to introduce you to what's called gluing. We're going to be able to glue the shapes together so they don't all obliterate and destroy separately. So let's have a look at that now. So let's create a rigid body set of all these mid pieces now. So let's open up the group. As you can see, they're all here. So I'm just going to select the top one, shift select the bottom one. So we've got everything selected in our mid group. Or you can right click and go select hierarchy, and now we're going to create another rigid body set. So up to here, we're going to go back to our effects menu or your bullet here, and I'm going to go up to bullet, and then rigid set, open the options box, and this one is going to be mid, so that we keep the same naming convention, and apply and close. And there you go. So we just need to do the process all over again. And I'm going to close this down, and as you can see, it's blowing up exactly as we did before, but it's making our inside ones now activate because it is acting like a collider. So even though we had the inner to sleep and not be affected until the car hits it, now the mid layer is touching and affecting the inside, so it's making them effective straight away. So let's just go back and fix it how we did before. So over here, if you've got your shapes turned on, show display shapes as before, and now we've got inner and now we've got mid. So let's go to mid and set up the same as we did before. Over to the attribute editor, and then go to our initial state, and let's give this, now I want the outer ones to be heavier, so I'm going to give them a mass of 40, and I want them to fall slower, so let's give them a dampening of sort of like 0.5, this is a 0.5 again, and we want it initially sleeping, and then very importantly we've got to change this back to hull, if you remember, and now let's just check. There you go. So it's not that now; it's only being affected by the car. Okay. So what I want to do now is just change up some of these settings a bit. So again, change this one down to 0 so that we've got no margin between the shapes. Now I want to introduce you to a setting called glue, and what it does is you can tell each fragment to sort of stick to each other and sort of stay a bit attracted instead of just being obliterated one at a time. So again, we're on the mid rigid body set initial state. I'm going to click glue shapes, and let's just see what that gives us. So we've got a strength of 2 and match constraints per body of 6. Let's just see what that gives us. Okay, so it's not noticeable at the moment because we don't actually have that many fragments, so you can see they're sort of staying together here. So let's whack this glue strength up to something like 6. And there you go. Sort of, there you go. They're sort of sticking. They're sort of, obviously it's not like they stick together like permanently. Well, you can do if you put this up high enough, but instead of like all being obliterated as they were before, you can now see these ones here are sort of a lot more closer proximity. Let's just play this back. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. There you go. And I'm going to change the, let's give this a bigger friction because I want these bits to be heavier. So 0.8 restitution, we don't want them to like bounce at all. I'm going to take the glue threshold up to 12. You know, this is something you just have to keep tweaking and playing with now. Let's see, so we've got a default mass of say like 80. Let's just see what that looks like. Yeah, so what you can see is the center ones are coming out, but the ones in the mid are just dropping down, and that's what I wanted. Let's just have a little look through there. You see how all the mid ones just drop and stay around here? They're heavier, they don't slide as much. And again, it's just for this demo. You could actually have multiple regions, bigger ones as well. Okay, that looks pretty good. So let's now go back and tweak some of these settings. So let's let's go back to the inner initials set. The default mass is very low. Let's put that on 5. We've got friction. Linear damping is pretty cool. We could sort of lower that a little bit so that they sort of fly out a bit more. Let's see. Let's see what that does. Yeah. So you can see they sort of fly out a bit further. They see this top bit like poof, sort of flies out. That's looking pretty nice. And it didn't take that much effort really. Obviously, once you learn this, you can sort of you know, keep going, add more and more. So let's now bring back the outer wall because that's going to add to the effect. So let's bring back the outer, and we've got this now. We've got this wall, so it's sort of see this hole that it'll break through. Boom. Awesome. Okay, now let's add it in a ground plane. I know we've added in our ground plane for the dynamics, but we could add in one visually, and we can also turn that into instead of using the ground plane, we can also turn that into a passive rigid collider as well, which we'll have a go at now. Let's do that now. Okay, let's rewind that to the beginning. Let's create our own ground plane for now. So let's go up to our modeling, create a plane. As you can see, it's very small at the moment, so let's give it a width and a height of 200. Subdivisions, it's good to have some, especially if you're going to use it as a floor. So let's put this height at sort of like 400, and let's give it a bit more width actually. Okay, so it's not just visual. We're going to actually show you how you can use this as a floor as well. So that's looking really good. Awesome. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I am going to save the file obviously first. I'm going to go back to our bullet solver and I'm going to turn off. So you've got a choice here. Either way works fine. So I'm going to turn off ground plane. So now all the pieces will just fall through the floor because there's no ground plane set. But what we're going to do is set this. I'm going to rename this ground plane. Okay. And now so this is the other option. I'm going to set this as the passive rigid body. So we go up to bullet and we go to passive rigid body, not active this time. Select the option box. And you've got hull, or you can use box. Let's see, actually just plain will do for now. But this is where this is what we need. So now the body type is static body. It's never going to move. It's never going to move. So let's leave this. And I don't think the mass really matters for now for this. Let's click apply and close. Now you've got your floor plane back, but instead of using the built-in one, you've got your own one. And the beauty about this is that this has its own settings as well. So if you go to the body shape, the bullet rigid settings, you can set this to different properties. So you can add this to what's called collision filters, which we will go into in the next video when we get a plane to like smash into a bridge. But you've also got, let's just see, you've got different settings of mass, but here you can change the friction. So not only have you got the friction of your fragments, you can actually apply it to the floor as well. So it's just a little bit of extra control. I mean, the friction is at 1 at the moment. So if we take this down and do this, you can see they slide. So instead of going back to the rigid body sets and saying, you might have 10 rigid body sets and changing the friction, you can do it just on here. And then you've got 2 sets of frictions for fine control. So let's take this friction back up to 1. You can say restitution, you can add damping. So just have a play. It's just another way of getting a bit more control for you guys. Okay, so now let's just play this back. I'm going to hide our NURBS curves. Let's just play this back. Boom. That's looking really cool. Awesome. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're just going to add a dynamic camera. Let's add a really cool cinematic camera that follows the Jeep. I mean, it's not a camera animation tutorial, but I'd like to just add it in at the end. And obviously, from the previous tutorial how to change the material of the inside. You know that from the Shatter settings tutorial that came before this. So I'd like you to sort of go and add your own material to this. And one thing I'd like to say is that if you're going to add, a material like a brick or granite or something, it is best to set the UVs to sort of do the UV layout before you start all this process. You can use a projection or a 3D texture to put nice granite and brick onto this, but it is best to do your UV layout first. That's just something to keep in mind. Okay, so let's polish this up. Let's go and add a nice camera. Okay, let's rewind this. Let's add a camera. So my personal preference of camera is to add a target camera because you've got a lot more control over it. So let's go up to our create and then cameras and then camera and aim and just add that to the scene. You can see it come in there. It's pretty small. If I just go to wireframe, you can see it there. So in our outliner, you've got a camera group. So you can actually animate the group, but you can also animate the we don't need the shapes on, but it doesn't matter. You've also got your camera and your camera aim, so you can animate both of these. Okay, so what we're going to do is you need to work in 2 views for this. So let's go perspective. There's your camera 1. So we want 2 views here. So let's go to can we click this button to get 2 views, and then over here we're going to have panel, we're going to have camera 1, so this is our camera shot, and over here we've got our perspective. Now normally what I do is I go panels, tear off copy, so that will tear off a copy of the window and I put that on my other monitor, but obviously I'm trying to fit this all on for you guys. So we've got our perspective camera here, so let's select our camera, which is we're not our camera group. We want to select our camera and pull this back, and you can see we're changing the view over here as we do this. I'm going to select the camera aim as well. Let's just turn off our shapes for now. Show, display shapes, then we can just easily select camera 1 and camera 1 aim. Okay, so I'm going to take the aim up to here, and we're on the first frame, so we want to be able to have the camera, let's say, come back like this. I'm going to turn off this button here, which doesn't let us select polygons, so it doesn't get in the way. Let's move this back. Okay, so we want, let's say, so we want to be close up on the wall as it bursts through. Let's select a target. You can do it by selecting it here or in the outliner. And let's say something like that, just to give it some basic, a basic camera angle for now. And I'm going to select both of these, this one and this one. And over here, I'm going to set a key for transform. So you can hit Shift W, and you see it gives you a key. And up here, you can see your XYZ has now got some keyframe on it. And let's go back to where the camera bursts through. So that's good. And so this is where really our first keyframe is going to be. So let's move this here. I want to sort of be underneath it. I'm going to select this button. I want to see the camera view. Okay, so I want to go show none and then just show polygons. Okay, and then I'm going to hit the 6 key to get shaded. Okay, so it bursts through. I'm going to delete this key from the beginning because the keyframe is going to start from 21. The camera's there. So let's say at a frame 30, we are starting to zoom the camera back, and maybe we sort of slowly start turning it to the right a little bit. I'll get our aim from the top and I'll move this back, and I want to stay this in the center. So you've got this burst and it's coming back. And then on frame 40, let's move the camera back so we can see the Jeep in view, and I want to get this lower. I want to be able to see the fragments and the road. Let's see what this looks like if we bring the target down as well. Click Shift W for that. Let's have a look. Camera aim, Shift W. I've got auto key on, by the way, so whenever I make a change, it will automatically update. Okay, so then the car goes past the camera, and I reckon on frame 60, we sort of move the aim. I'm just doing something really quick here. You can obviously play with this more, and I'm going to move the camera sort of around, and maybe it's just gone, the car's just gone past, so something like this. Let's just see what that gives us. Boom. Okay, so here we definitely need the camera to be more in view here. So this looks like. That's pretty cool. Okay, so here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit my space bar over this just to give us one view because it's a bit crowded at the moment. And then I'm going to go to panels, camera 1. I'm going to hit the 6 key for shaded. I'm just going to play this back to see what we got. Boom. Boom. There you go. Obviously the cameras need work, but it's just a really quick rough demo. And obviously, you know, you can add your lighting. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I don't quite like the way the camera goes out and then back in again. So let's just go to the same view again. Let's change this to perspective. See what we're doing. I think it might be better to have this close. Get some interaction with that vehicle as it sort of. I mean, you could tweak this all day, you know. I think I'd like to be under the car. You get that real sort of depth to it. And this is something I would probably spend a couple hours on doing, to be honest. Get that camera nice. And yeah, it's looking pretty cool for now. And you can also say select the camera. We're at the moment we're on a focal length of 35, which is quite a lot of perspective. But you might want that dynamic. So say if you go to here, this shot here, we might say, I don't know, let's take this to a 24mm lens and then bring the camera in further, and you get much more tight perspective. So you've got a lot of options there. See this? So you've got a lot more perspective. So now you got, yeah. So it's a different feel. I mean, I prefer the 35. I think it's a little bit too much. So let's go back to here. check our camera out, rewind and just play. There we go, real dynamic shot. As you can see, so I really hope you've learned a lot here. We've learned about rigid body sets, about the dynamics. We've gone into quite some advanced settings, but nothing too big. We've learned about the physics, the fragments, the shards, using the different rigid body sets, the glue. So we've taken a lot on board. So I really hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope you've stuck with me till the end, and I really appreciate it. In the next video, we will be going on to a much more complicated example where we flying out of control plane into a bridge and we have multiple collisions going on, and it's going to be really cinematic. So I hope you can stick around for that, and I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.